Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I might crack a joke about, is this thing working? Just based on the remote approach of the last couple of years. Thank you so much for being with us in person, and it's super important to see you all in this room. We're super happy to have you here, and this is a very important topic to us regarding how do team dynamics play. First and foremost, I will be your moderator today. My name is Madalina Niculae. Some of you might know me from working in Ubisoft a couple of years ago. Some of you might know me from MPG or even Improbable. I am here today accompanied by my very lovely colleagues here, a bunch of amazing people that have led the industry with a people-first approach, as we'd like to tell it, but in a couple of minutes we'll try to define what that actually means. I would like you to introduce yourselves, if that's okay, starting off with Cristiana.
Hello, my name is Cristiana Serra. I'm the head of studio for Marmalade Game Studios in Portugal. I've been in the industry for around 13 years now. Started as a QA, which I love and I miss in a lot of moments, quieter times. I've been at Marmalade for around 9 years now. We started the studio in Lisbon with 7, when we are 50 people now, which I'm very proud of. And yes, very happy to be with you guys today, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Cristiana, for joining us. It's super important to see exactly how you treat your studio. Moving on to Ionut.
Good morning.
See, this is not working.
Yeah, okay. Good morning. So I'm Ionut. I work with Funcom as the head of studio, Funcom Bucharest. I've been in the industry for a lot of time, like almost 20 years in various companies, from Ubisoft, Bandai Namco, Vivendi back in the days when we were building mobile games. I worked as a programmer to begin with, and after that I moved into product, whatever, call it project management, producing. It's hard to tell people outside the industry what a producer actually does in gaming. I usually use movies as a parallel. That's the easiest way. Yeah, and I've been with Funcom for 3 years, opened the Bucharest studio with 80 lovely people. But we're going to talk about that later. Thanks, Mother.
Thanks, Ionut.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. Vlad, last but not least, give us the scoop.
Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Vlad, and sorry about my voice. If anybody was at the party last night, you're probably thinking, oh God, please take the microphone away from that guy. I'm the studio head of AMC here in Romania. We do art for video games. We're probably one of the largest studios here locally. We're also part of Keyword Studios. It's a global provider of services in the game industry. I'm the youngest one in the industry, I think, from this panel. Only been in it for 4 years. My previous experience being in software, primarily running business development. And I've been the studio head of AMC only for a year and a little bit. But I think I've learned a lot in that year and hoping to share some of that with you.
Thanks so much, Vlad. As you can see, we are just a very, very bit nervous. I'm hoping everything will go fine, especially after probably the shameful moments we kind of passed yesterday at the party. So I actually, when I get nervous, I crack jokes. If they're bad, please raise your hand. I'll step away from the scene. Moving on to a little bit more realistic topics, and within the current industry market, we wanted to reshape a bit what having a successful product, or in this case, a successful business actually means, and why it's so important that we focus on the people that we work with and the people that we hire, because there is no way to run a successful business without the best people possible, and the best people possible will only work towards sustainability. Sorry, I used the sustainable word. Apologies.
Yeah, we tried not to do that.
We said we'd not use the word sustainable, but it slipped. Apologies. We're going to try to answer, actually, my colleagues will try to answer a lot of questions today, or a lot of topics, and hopefully reshape a bit how they see and how they apply it in their businesses, some direction, and how they define specifically what does it mean to be people first, or people as a priority. Kicking it off properly this time. Ionut, would you like to go first regarding what's your definition?
Named. Yeah. Thank you, Madam. So people first. By the way, all of us drank a lot last night. All of us sang a lot last night.
Yeah.
So we're booting up still. So people first. For me, people first is a mindset. It's not. I mean, you cannot define a people first strategy. It's a mindset that your managers will have, and this comes from like C-level to all of your upper management and middle management. So it's more of a mindset. It's a way of thinking where you think about how your employees will feel at work, what their life will be when they are at work, rather than putting business first. So you put your employees first, and then you put business second. And it's been talked about how this will actually affect your business. And then studies have been made, and we do have numbers showing that if you have this type of a modern approach, on the long run, you actually get better results, right? And you can measure that by customer satisfaction, which goes up. You can measure that by the productivity that you get. And that, like, studies show that you have around 20% of productivity increase in the medium to long term. But the one I actually like is the measuring the employee absenteeism, right? So how much do people show up at work? And that actually increases by 40%, which is like a big number.
Yeah.
So if you only look at this, having people at work more makes a lot of sense. And it does hurt you in the short term, of course, but it pays off in the long term. And it can be done at a studio level, and it would be ideal to be at a company level. But even if you lead like a small team, I would definitely recommend you knowing the people that you work with, understanding what they need. And it's not simple, right? Because every person has different needs.
Yep.
And as managers, we tend to have a know-it-all approach, right? Because like, we have needs, we know what our needs are, then other people probably have the same needs, but we
can assume.
Yeah, we assume. And the bigger the team, the harder it is to actually stay connected to each of the individuals. But if you do that, you'll have people showing up, and you'll have people being engaged. And like, for me, that's the greatest win.
That's awesome point of view, Ionut. Just to add on that note, motivation is key, because your teams will always work as they're motivated, and they do feel more respected when you actually get to know them, and not just like, hey, you, that guy in the corner. So thank you for sharing that. Go on, Ivan.
Yeah, I also want to say that if you look at employee satisfaction, having like a people-first approach means looking at all aspects of the employees' needs, because probably all of you have in a sort of another tried an employee satisfaction survey, be it to Office, Vibe, Lipsum, whatever. And you have various metrics. And what most companies do, they have a few metrics that they focus on, and they have very big spikes. And then they have other metrics that are low. And it's easy to say, okay, in our company, this isn't the focus. I don't know, choose your metric. But then those metrics are also important for a chunk of your population, of your team.
Yep.
So for me, having an employee-first, people-first approach means looking at all metrics and working on those hard ones, the ones that are hard for you as a manager, that are hard for the company.
Most impactful.
And yeah, trying to raise those lows. Just my voice. Trying to raise the lows of my voice also would be a good one today.
Thank you, karaoke.
Vlad?
Vlad?
I think you make some good points. One thing that I would like to add is that business first is people first, in a way, in my opinion. because you can't really have one without the other. It's the same like Mother said. You know, you can do all sorts of cool things for your team. You can do all sorts of things that motivate your team, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a solid, sustainable, I think that was the right word. I know it's confusing because it's used a lot to talk about recycling, but having a sustainable, resilient business, I think, is the #1 thing that actually helps you put people first. Because it provides you with the resources and the stability. I mean, looking at the industry today as well, you can clearly see that a lot of those companies that you see nowadays, you know, doing layoffs or closing off, I am very certain they were people-first companies, and they had policies that motivated people. They had policies that had, I don't know, teams that were running smoothly. They had managers that did their job well. However, you know, shit still happened. And this is the reality, especially, you know, speaking from the perspective of an external developer who has much less control over the projects that it's working on. The risk is that much higher to be impacted by something that's out of your control. So addressing that in the first place, ensuring that your business is sustainable, is run in such a way that you prevent events like this from happening, and that can be a million things, which we can dive into. That's, I think, #1.
So we've seen that happening loads of times, especially with agencies, basically, just like you said, external developers. Once the publishers or the bigger companies cut off a project or decide not to invest in a certain project, it's automatic that the contractors are usually the ones who leave. But that also impacts the publishers themselves. So in this case, it's a very good tie-in with our next point and our next topic. How do we actually, or how do you actually build the business in a sustainable or a resilient way? Call it whatever you want. How do you make it work, especially in the current market? Cristiana, I would love to hear from you.
I think it's, following up with what Vlad just said, I think it's absolutely impossible to be people first without being very, very aware of your business. I think if we want to really protect the people that work with us, we need to make sure that in 6, 12, 18 months, they're going to be working with us still. And there's a company that is growing and that is going to allow them to learn more and to grow as well, and to be bigger and better in their careers. So one thing is 100% tied in with the other. The way that we can do this, there's a lot of ways to do this. There's also a lot of ways to be people first, and I think, honestly, it varies a lot depending on the company, depending on the lead or the C-level that you have, the upper management you have, but it also depends a lot on the team that you have, because it depends on what the people that you work with need and appreciate and respond to. Looking at the more business side of all of this, we need to make sure that we have a long-term goal in front of us, and that we are honest with the capacity that we have, with the resources that we have, that we look at things for what they are instead of what they could be, but also being a bit ambitious because we want to push the envelope. There's always things that we can do when we start a project or when we're in the middle of it. There's always 3 pillars that we can flex. You have scope of the project, you have resources, you have the team, and you have time. To flex when something happens or you need to make sure that the project that you're working in is sustainable. So there's a lot of little things that we can do every day, not just in a long-term plan, to make sure that we keep on track and that we are reactive to things that happen, but not just reactive. We plan for them. We plan not just for the worst case scenario, but maybe for a midterm scenario. So yeah.
I always used to tell my teams, hope for the best, but always prepare for the worst, because that's the only way to go. Vlad, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that preparing for the worst is, I think, the hard part. How do you really do that, right? How can you tell the future? How can you know what's going to happen? And how do you prepare for that? And this is a tough one. I don't think we're going to have an answer here. I've thought about it long and hard. I've actually started writing a few things, so hopefully after this I'm going to do a blog post, and if anyone's interested in hearing it, you can go on our site and read that. But like, for instance, one of the things that you can do as an external developer is making sure you have a very healthy churn of customers, right? So in many industries, you hear this concept that retaining a client is much cheaper and better than having new clients, and that is very, very true and valid. But what ends up happening in a lot of companies, they take that and they make it an absolute. Like, we have to retain all of our clients. We have to use, you know, for lack of a better word, we have to milk, you know, a client for everything they've got, which is, it's a terrible, terrible attitude, because what ends up happening is you end up being dependent on that client for a very, very long time. And you end up sleeping on your laurels. You forget about continuous business development, hunting for new business. And sooner or later, you know, you're gonna be with that client 5 years, 7 years, you know, it's gonna be good. But at some point, it's gonna stop. And then what do? You're gonna have half your studio benched or more and scrambling to find new business, and you realize you don't have a pipeline because you were counting on all those existing contacts. So then, of course, then there's the other side of things. You don't want to do too much new business development, because then you're in that, oh my God, I need to grow. I need to constantly grow and grow and grow and grow. And when does it stop? And you run into the same problem. So there's a very fine balance that you need to get to, where you're in an area of, say, 30%-ish of business that you know is changing every year. You know you're losing customers and you're bringing new customers in. You're always focused in keeping that pipeline healthy. Doesn't have to be 30%, that's just off the top of my head, but it has to be a healthy one that keeps you in a stable, steady growth, that's not too explosive, it doesn't make you balloon up, but it's also, you know, keeping this sort of awareness that, hey, I'm losing business every year, so I have to do something about it to make up for that.
It's absolutely fine not to come up with all the solutions right now. It's good to talk about what we can do to mitigate some of those risks. And we're actually going to get into that just a bit later. One of the top...
I'd like to add something, Madam.
Yes, of course, yes.
I think it's important to prepare for the worst, right? But I also think preparing for disasters doesn't make sense, right? And I've seen this happen many times. Okay, what do we do if disaster hits us?
Yeah.
Like, you cannot prepare for disaster, right? Like, extraordinary times calls for extraordinary measures. I would advise everyone to just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Prepare for bad times. Prepare for, I don't know, a contract that doesn't follow through. But
have reasonable
if we look at
expectations.
Embracer, right?
Yeah.
They didn't prepare for 2 billions not showing up, right? And maybe they should have, but I don't think that was like a valid scenario at that point, right?
I can give another example here, and it's pretty close to us regarding a couple of years ago with the war on Ukraine. We had a lot of companies that were working with us that had to literally overnight find 70 to 100 developers because they had to stop production. So it's the kind of thing nobody can expect properly. Like the time you would need to take to plan for that takes more time and resources than the chances of it actually occurring. So,
yeah, and what you can do is to try to insert agility in your company, right? An agile mindset, a way of reacting. Right? Yeah. If you can improve your time to react, there was a pun there, TTK. If you try to improve that, then you're better prepared.
yeah.
As you said, like a war.
That's all you can.
You're not going to prepare for a war, right?
Yeah. On that note, I just want to draw back a bit and go back to something that Cristiana said regarding teams and how important it is how you actually build your teams and how do you keep the synergies within those teams to match your company culture and to basically support your business. In that case, Cristiana, back to you.
I think this is a sore point for me. People make fun a lot at Marmalade at me for this. I have extremely long hiring processes, and my teamworks make fun of me for that. The one thing that I'm extremely territorial and protective about my studio is the culture. We fought hard to be where we are, to be a very nice environment in which we are actually friends and friendly with each other, and people are able to express their views and provide feedback and positive constructive feedback and positive feedback as well. So I'm extremely aware when we add someone else to the team that sometimes a little rock in the lake causes big ripples. And in Portugal, for example, and it's a bit different from the UK because that's where our other studio is. When we hire someone, we have a 1 month period of experience. And after that, they're hired for the company, for the full year at least. So it's a big stake. Like if you don't figure out in that first month that it's not a fit, you're gonna be with that person for the next year. And if it's someone that is going to disrupt what you have, it can be really big. It can cause really big consequences. So I'm very picky with the people that I hire, extremely picky with the people that I hire. But honestly, every time someone makes fun of me for that, I've kind of just showed them the facts. I've hired almost 40-ish people in 9 years, and I only had 2 people leaving Marmalade.
Turnover is amazing.
Which is a great retention, and I'm very, very proud of that. And I think it's because we are protecting the culture. We are protecting who we are as a company. Because honestly, if we are being extremely open and transparent, the company on the other side of the street is probably going to pay roughly the same salaries. They're probably going to give you roughly the same career progression, equally exciting products. So what makes it important, or what is a good reason to stay at my studio, at my team? And I think that it's up to us a little bit, as in the head of studio and the leads and the upper management, to be able to focus on what we are and actually what makes us us, and continue to enforce that environment and protect the team that we have.
I love the term lead by example in this case, just like you said. And one thing that I found super important is exactly like you said, a small rock might cause big ripples, and the biggest demotivator in teams is the person that doesn't fit in and usually brings down that motivation. So we all need to work together and find the way, but sometimes it's just not a good culture fit. Mm-hmm. If I go on too much, Ionut, please save me.
You're not going on too much, so you can continue. No, just kidding. Yeah, people that I've worked with probably know me for this. Like I use the term culture a lot. Culture. I probably use it in all of the town halls in a way or another. If I work with the managers, I talk about culture. And I do think it's important. And the pandemic also showed that it's very important, actually. And there are companies that have managed to successfully create like a remote-first culture, or even a remote-only culture, which makes sense. And then there are companies that fail at creating an in-person, on-site culture, which in terms lead to the company going downwards. On our end, how we approached it at Funcom, or around 3 years ago when we started, we took a long time until we figured out how to actually recruit and who to recruit. And the way I look at hiring people and creating a culture on the long term is through hiring slow, firing fast. And whenever I say this, some people are gonna jump me and say,
"Feel agile."
What do you mean by firing fast? Do you want to fire people?
Fail fast, agile.
Yes, yeah. But we have a very lengthy recruitment process. And we started hiring QA, and we got a lot of feedback that our recruitment process is a lot longer than recruitment processes in other companies. And that they met a lot of people. Some were happy with it, some not so happy. But we stuck to our way, and I think we're in a good position now. Because we hired slowly, it probably takes around 2 weeks to actually go through all the interviews, which is a lot. I don't know how long it takes for you, but
sometimes a month.
Also longer, yeah.
Seems to be a good strategy, though. And similar.
At least it worked for us, right? And I don't think there's a good profile and a bad profile. I think there are profiles that are fit for a particular culture and profiles for a different type of culture. For us, for example, we looked at people that aren't as competitive and self-centered. And that worked for us because that's what we were building. We're a Nordic company and we have our Nordic values. So that's what worked for us. But for other companies, you might need some like VIPs, people that are very competitive. They're always fighting to push boundaries, and that also makes sense, right? So if you have a culture that's like very competitive, then you would definitely not fit in someone that is more collaborative rather than trying to be like the VIP, and the other way around. And as you said, if you find someone, if you bring someone to the company that's outside of your culture, that can cause like a lot of damage in a pretty short amount of time. Because people start fighting, and as humans, we have a natural tendency to look at the bad things rather than be optimistic.
Especially here in Romania.
In the Romanian culture, that's even that's even more. So I do think it is important. So this is hiring, and then the second thing we're looking at is development, career in development, and this is where the fire fast concept kicks in. If things don't work out, I think it's our duty as managers to let people know, like fast.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not working. Like we are looking for, I don't know, someone that's proactive, or even at the other spectrum, we are looking for someone that's reactive, that can get things done fast. And give that feedback, be honest about it. If it doesn't work out, it won't work out on the long run. It will be bad for the company because you're not getting what you are searching for, and it will be even worse for the person because that person is not going to get like a good performance review, a good appraisal. They're not going to get opportunities, and they will definitely have a place where they would get those opportunities, right? So that's how we approach it.
That's a really great one, especially providing feedback very, very fast. That's very important because otherwise you just get a profile who might be very good in certain situations or be very adaptable and just let them die out. And after 6 months, when you get them to your performance review, you say to them, I don't like the way that you work, that's also a stronger demotivator.
Or even worse, you're not saying that after 6 months. It's just like an average appraisal. And then they stick around for 1 more year. Yeah. But they're not going to develop because they're in a situation where things are not actually working out, right? And you're basically blocking that person's development on the long term.
That's interesting because I think intuition plays a big role in hiring as well. And I've found that having a long hiring process can be detrimental to finding talent because there's a lot of good talent that runs from long, complicated processes. Maybe it's coming out of arrogance, which I get is a trait that you don't necessarily want because sometimes like, oh, I'm too good for this. But sometimes it's just, it's human nature because you're gonna have competition out there that's gonna have a more streamlined process that's maybe gonna make it more attractive and they're gonna win that talent away from you. So we've actually tried to streamline it a lot more. Obviously there's a test in between because we're an art-focused company, so you can just hire someone based on one interview. So generally, there are some exceptions, like if the profile is amazing and you know instantly that that person looks great, we may even skip the test and just do one interview and then that person's hired. It's like you said, you have a probation period. We have 3 months probation period in Romania, which is great. So you have the time to actually see that person in action. And that's actually the time when you're making a decision. Because realistically, no matter how long you're making the hiring process, no matter how many interviews you're taking that person through, you never really get to know that person until you're working with them. It's just, and the way people present themselves in interviews is going to be way different in most cases, then it's going to be, working in the company alongside people, especially, 2-3 months in, once they start getting more friendly and, the real self starts coming out. So intuition plays a big role. And preparing for what you want and what you need in advance. I think that's also very important for you, understanding the role that you have open and the type of profile and person that you need to fill that role, the team that role has around them, and when you will see that person, your intuition will help you, like, this looks like the right person for the job. And then, yeah, you're gonna make mistakes probably sometimes, but that's fine because it's really no way around that. You cannot have in a 1-hour interview enough time to really get to know, no matter how hard you try.
That's why you have 4 one-hour interviews.
I think you can have 10. It's still not enough.
You
But
can't beat math.
maybe if you go out for a beer or something like that, or you go out singing like we did, I think that would be a good idea, to...
Unfortunately, we've had beer yesterday for probably 4 hours. We have less time today here, so I need to get you back a bit on track.
No, you gotta start it now.
No, Vlad, but seriously, back to you. We were talking earlier regarding business and how you actually choose business and how you actually plan for that. How, or what is your approach in choosing business ventures in this case? How do you go, instead of, can I do this, should I do this?
Yeah, that's a tough one. As service providers, like I said, we don't really have that much control, right? So what we can do is we need to have a very, very solid business development plan where we're going out there and we're filling the pipeline with as many opportunities as we can. Because you're right, sometimes, not all projects should be taken or not all projects should be renewed. There's a lot of risk. It's very comfortable to sit in the same project for years on end, but the truth is that can lead to your team going into a routine, not enjoying their work anymore. In other cases, you may have to choose a project that doesn't make people happy. Like, for instance, a couple of years ago, we had a project in the team that was so tough on the team that we had people coming up to us basically crying because of how difficult it was working on the project. Not difficult from a job perspective, but the client was difficult, the communication was difficult, the engine was super difficult, and so on and so on. So, there's nothing much you can do in that situation. If you really need the project, you need the business to go on. But what you need to do on the other hand is you need to be extremely transparent with your team. I think that plays a crucial role in talking to the team so that they can understand that you are not taking on a project out of greediness. You are taking a project because business must work, and business must work for the exact reasons we were talking about before. Like, it's for you, right? Yeah. Without a business, we cannot pay salaries, we cannot give benefits and all of that. But of course, you need to support it as well. Programs like mental well-being, right? Programs, those are some of the things that we have across all studios in Keywords. Within the benefits that we offer, you can get access to everything from psychological assistance to vouchers for a spa. I know that, there are little things, but I think that the little things matter as well.
They do. Cristiana?
Yeah, so that is a very interesting point that you made. And it's a bit different from what Vlad was saying, because we do not work with clients, so it's a bit different. We don't do contracting. We publish our own games. The way that we do is that we do have contracts to use big IPs like Monopoly, Game of Life, Battleship, etc. And there is a temptation sometimes, right? Because sometimes you get a really nice week and you get 3 contracts signed. And it's just this temptation of, if I could just triple my team, I would do all of them in 6 to 8 to 12 months. And that would mean, triple the revenue, triple the profit in 6 to 12 months. But to be fair, and going back to the reason of this panel, that is not the people-first approach. We need to be really careful about the capacity that we have on the studio, because if I triple my team today, in 18 months, will all of those people have anything to do? Will I be jeopardizing the team that I have today, their jobs, their livelihoods, because I'm tripling my team for short-term goals, so to speak? So there is this temptation, and of course, there are decisions that are made in the sea levels and even above that, that we have to try to navigate the best that we can. But being really honest with what we have and trying to actually look at the people that we have and make the most of them, maximize their time, maximize their efficiency, making sure that we give them opportunities to change projects, for example, because people get bored really quickly if they're in the same project for, I don't know, 8 months doing avatars. Poor artists. No one deserves that. So if there is opportunities for us to just switch a little bit here and there, it's going to be better for them. They're going to be happier. They're going to feel more challenged. Everyone wants to feel challenged. Everyone wants to feel like they're growing. And if we provide those opportunities inside of the team that we have, with the projects that we have at hand, we're all winning in the long run.
Awesome. Ionut, you wanted to say something?
I just want to say you can move people to a different project so they can do different avatars. It's like, but sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, right?
Exactly.
But even changing projects, doing the same thing but on a different project.
It helps.
Yeah.
It helps.
I think it helps.
In that case, that's a very good opening for our last topic for today. And how do you actually do resource planning? How do you plan for when the project needs to start, but then how do you do ramp down? What do you do at the end of a project? Ionut, you're good to go. You're good to go, my
Very
friend.
big Excel sheets, like a lot of planning. I would love for this to actually be be the way things work, but we try to plan, of course, right? We have a few projects that are ongoing, and then we think we know when that project is going to end, but I think I love numbers, and probably 60% of the projects I've worked on have been delayed at least once, but usually more than once.
To be expected, to be honest. To
What?
be expected at one point in this industry.
So you end up knowing that your project is going to get delayed. So what do you do then? You plan for the project delays, and you have version 1, version 2, version 3. Is it going to be 3 months? Is it going to be a year?
Best case, worst case.
And then intuition comes in, and experience, like, okay, this is not my first rodeo. I'm going to use the information that I have from the past. I'm going to talk to people that have been through this, and I'm gonna plan ahead and have version 1, version 2. But you still end up having, I don't know, a few months of people not having projects, which I personally love. They're hard. They're hard on the mindset of people, because even if we don't think that everyone wants actually to like work and do stuff, people are at least in gaming, people are genuinely interested in building games, right? In developing, in creating. And it's going to be hard for them to not do anything. And if you just say, yes, study, just to study whatever, they're not going to do it. They want to create. And I love this period because it's a time when you can go through that backlog of things that you never had time to do.
Technical debt.
Yeah,
All the
technical debt also, like all the hacks that you made, fix some of those, and it's also a time when you can actually spark new projects, right? If you have a few months, then you can have a team of, I don't know, 5 people working on that crazy idea that someone had 9 months ago, and projects can be born out of this type of period. And yeah, some companies do have the concept of having people like inter-projects, and they're just benched, basically.
Yeah.
Like Ubisoft
Doing
has
R&D,
been talked about with their inter-projet thing, right? EA has a similar stuff. All companies have a way of managing this, but I personally love the fact that you can look at the technical debt, you can create new tools that everyone is asking for. Like in all companies, you never have enough tools programmers, right?
Yes.
So yeah, the way I've done it in the past and the way I've seen it done in the past is you plan for the actual dates, then you plan for the expected release date, because it's also a matter of not being able to start the next project, right? Because, okay, benching people for 3 months is something, but not being able to start projects, and I think for you is even worse, right? Because you're talking to a new company,
Yep.
and then you cannot, I mean, you need to figure it out somehow.
Ramp up at the start of the project.
Yeah, yeah. So, and sometimes you use outsourcing for that, right, for your peaks. And it's great that you manage to have some companies that can help you and you build long-term partnerships. But yeah, it's a complicated thing, but I think there's beauty in the fact that sometimes you have 3 to 6 months of not working and actually being able to do those backlogged stuff.
Yeah, I actually agree with that a lot. The way that we normally tackle this at Marmalade, we look at our games as evergreen. So we have really cool IPs that people keep buying. And honestly, there is a lot of appetite inside of the games for more content. So after we release the game, it's not done. It's not, it's just entered a new phase. And I love that about knowing that we're going to be late. We have actually implemented something at my studio in which we have a fake release date. And we're all working towards a fake release date that we know we're going to fail. But when we get there and we're like 2 months away from it and everyone gets, jittery, oh my God, only 2 months. We're like, actually, we have 3. Because all of the revenue was only forecasted for 2 or 3 months after. But because of this, because there's this intuition, because we know the type of teams that we have, that they want to do the extra mile, they want to do just more this polishing, and we actually need to cater for that, because that's the beauty of making games, actually, is when you get to that moment in the end of it and get to make it beautiful and perfect. But yeah, so coming back to how we deal with ramp downs and ramp ups, we try to maximize as much as possible our capacity. Lots of Excel sheets. I would love to show you my Tetris Excel sheet with lots of color-coded projects all over the place that honestly only myself and 2 other people understand. No one else understands that. But it is a Tetris game in the end of it, because we know we're going to have more content to deliver on X project, or we are talking with our product team and they tell us, there's a huge opportunity of return on investment if we make more, I don't know, stuff for Monopoly. And we're like, actually, we have this little bit here of capacity. Let's prioritize that because we have a little bit of time. There is a lot to be said of giving downtime to the team as well. They need to be able to take a step back, take a breather, and say, okay, actually, this all happened, and I think I would have done a better job if I knew this skill better. Let's do PDT. Okay, this is the moment we're going to do PDT. For example, now we're going to do a round of animation workshops at Marmalade, because we've learned a lot of new skills doing the game that we're doing now, and a lot of people on the team is interested. So we're going to use this little bit of time to make sure that we share the knowledge. It's good for the team and it's good for the company, because we have more people with that knowledge internally. And yeah, it's a little bit of balancing all of this and making sure that in the end we are still prioritizing the business, because we need to, but also giving a little bit of time for people to do a little bit more than just work on the projects and work on their tasks. I think it's a win-win for all of us.
Thanks so much. So we're at time right now. However, I just want to say another great thank you to you for participating in this panel, and your opinions are invaluable because it actually shares a lot of direction. And the thing is that we have 3 completely different gaming companies that are still very much aligned, at least from my point of view right now, on on what's the best approach, at least for them, or at least in theory, what we aim to do. To be honest, if we'd have that more in the industry and more alignment, especially within the much, much larger, bigger companies. You mentioned Embracer earlier. I think we'd be really on the right path. So let's see how that goes.
I need to say that I don't fully agree.
What?
I don't fully agree on that.
Okay.
I think it's great that we're aligned, but I think this isn't the only way or the best way. I think
No.
depending on your business model and
You need to apply.
your products and so on, you might have a different approach. And like, it makes sense to not have a people-first approach sometimes. It's probably bad in the long term, but it makes sense.
Good for next panel. So, thank you, everyone.